here with Elise. Elise, thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So tell me about your senior year so far. What's going on? It's the spring. Things are winding down a little bit, I suspect.
Yeah, bittersweet. I've actually had a great senior year so far. I've been blessed. I applied early decision into the school that I really wanted to go to, and I was luckily accepted. And so that's made my second half of the year a lot more stress-free than the rest of my friends, which has been, I'm just beyond lucky for that. And that's been super exciting. And senior year is just the best time to really continue to embrace the friendships that I've made throughout my 4 years at Bryn Mawr. And I love Bryn Mawr with all my heart, and it's getting sad and bittersweet to leave. But I'm just trying to capture the moments that I have left, at least.
So how long did you go there your whole life, pretty much?
So actually, my sister's 3.5 years older than me, and she was a lifer at Bryn Mawr. So she started in kindergarten, went all the way through 12th, is at Colgate University now. But I actually didn't start until 6th grade. And so I went, go 6th through 12th. I went to West Towson Elementary. We used to live over in Towson, and there was no public school that my parents wanted to send my sister to. And it opened up, and my grade was the first grade to go from kindergarten to 5th. And so I met great people there, like Andrew Kang went there, Chase Spurrier, a couple people from Gilman. And I still keep in touch with a lot of them, and they're all great kids. But we all parted ways, and then some of us have come back together, which has been really fun. And I loved my time there, but I've definitely loved my time at Bryn Mawr more, for sure.
So if you were going to give a tour of Bryn Mawr for a student that was kind of looking to go there versus Roland Park and McDonough and some of the other, and NDP and some of the other schools around here, what would you really highlight on your tour, or your kind of presentation on what Bryn Mawr is like?
Yeah. Well, first I'd dismay a couple of those, or dispel a couple of those rumors that, or stereotypes that Bryn Mawr is super competitive or super cutthroat, because, and I always say this to anybody looking at Bryn Mawr is not competitive with each other. It's more competitive with yourself and where you want to push yourself to. So if you don't want to push yourself very hard in your classes, you don't have to. And you'll still get a full Bryn Mawr experience with great friends and great teachers. And honestly, I think that is the best part of Bryn Mawr, are the teachers. Like, I've always been someone who's very teacher-centric, who really appreciates the connections that I make with my teachers. And so Bryn Mawr has always been perfect for me in that sense, because all of my teachers have always been so apt to help me and excited to. And I always say that the teachers at Bryn Mawr view you as an intellectual equal, which is something you don't get everywhere until you go off to college and they treat you like an adult. And so I think that's something that Bryn Mawr's students have up on everybody else when they go to college, is that they already know how to interact with professors like they're real people, and like they're there to support them, which I found has just totally changed the experience and makes learning so much more fun than it is. And that's the real thing about Bryn Mawr, is it's focusing on learning more than grades. So like any teacher will tell you at Bryn Mawr that they don't care what you get on a test, as long as you truly feel comfortable with the material and are inspired to keep going and to keep working forward.
Now you have the Harkness tables over there. That's kind of a big part of the experience with teachers, is because the teachers kind of sit around the table. And even though we do that here in English classes, I think the furniture does play a big role in that feeling of being included and everyone having a voice, and the teacher kind of being on the same plane almost in the discussion.
Yeah, and when I used to give tours of Bryn Mawr to families in middle school, I would always take them by, in the middle school there's only 2 or 3 Harkness tables, but they're so important. And it's a bizarre concept because not a lot of other places use it, but they are so helpful because it just gets rid of all the stigma, and the biggest part is that everybody looks at each other. There's no way that somebody can just hide out and not talk. So it forces everybody to be a part of the conversation, and also it creates an atmosphere where people want to get the people who aren't involved. So in middle school, I know we haven't used this in high school since people are so much more excited to talk, but in middle school they used to have us, if we noticed that somebody wasn't talking, we'd say, "Oh, Ava, I wonder what you would think about this part of the book." And so it just kind of helped people get comfortable with speaking out loud. And So I lead something called Ethics Bowl in our school, which is like debate, but with only ethics. And I've found that that has been a really key player in my ability to speak and articulate myself in class. And I find that the juniors, seniors that join the Ethics Bowl team are, it's crazy to see the difference between them and the freshmen. And the freshmen are so intellectual, but they just don't know how to articulate yet. And it builds up in those years. And it's one of the things that I've noticed that Bryn Mawr does really well in comparison to other schools, is just that I see that people are able to express themselves freer and also just like with more confidence.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So how'd you start this Ethics Bowl club? Is it a club?
Yeah, it's a club. So it's a club, but it counts as like an activity because it's a lot of work. So we start in September and go till February when we have our regional competition. So a little backstory on the club. It was started my sophomore year by Anna Bez, who was a senior that year, and Allie Gordy, both of which I was friends with. And Anna Bez pulled me aside since she was friends with my sister and said, you know, you should really join my new club. And so it was kind of one of these, and she was like, okay, yeah, I'll come. Mm-hmm. And I ended up falling in love with it. And I've had an incredible time doing it. And the people that joined that sophomore year are the same 3 people or 4 people that were my team this year. So it was like a really nice rounded out moment. But I will say, like, it's a lot of work. We start and we get a case book of 15 cases, and they're all hypotheticals or real life situations. So this year we were talking about all sorts of things. Like in the past, we've talked about, should Paralympic athletes be paid less than Olympic athletes because they don't bring in as much revenue in ad sales? But is that ethical to do? Like, even though it's logical, is it ethical? We've talked about lowering the drinking age. We've talked about all sorts of topics, but we get 15 cases. You have to completely memorize your stances on them, be ready to compete, and you go to a regional competition. We're in the Mid-Atlantic region, which just happens to compete at U Baltimore downtown. And last year we came in second place. This year we came in first, which put us into this national qualifier bracket. And we played a team from Cincinnati and won, and went to nationals at UNC. So that was just, not this past weekend, but the prior. And it was incredible. It was so much fun and such a great reward to the 3 years that we've put in. And it is really nice to see such a young club find success in the way that we have. And it is a really important skill, especially I'll be studying biomedical engineering in college, and I'm planning to minor in bioethics because I've had such a positive experience with this. But I think that anybody, no matter where they're going in life, can totally benefit from ethics classes because they just teach you how to be a better person.
Yeah, that's interesting. Does somebody lead this club? How big is the club? And do you guys all stick together for these 3 years in the program?
Yeah, so we have new members every year. You have to try out to be on a team that actually presents. Now, the club is actually bigger than just the team. So the teams are 5 people and then 2 alternates. But then there's other people in the club that just do research or just come to provide insight into our conversations. And we meet every single Friday. And the leaders are myself, Christina Susu, Grace Martin, and Maggie Lynch. And so we're the 4 leaders, and we split up into 2 teams. And then my 5th person that I've been with all these years is McKenna Bachman. And so this year, us 5, we were competing together, like in the national qualifier, but we actually have a green and a gold team for Bryn Mawr colors. And something that we do that we find personally super helpful, and why we think that we've had so much success as a young club, is that we don't divide JV varsity, like one team loaded and one team not. Mm-hmm. We divide by skill and experience all the way down. So there's 1 freshman on each team, there's 1 new junior on each team, and then our 4 senior leaders we divide into 2s. So that way everybody has the support they need instead of just buffering up one team to just kind of take the brunt. And it worked. So there's 24 teams in the region, in the Mid-Atlantic region, and both of our teams went to the semifinals, which was just 4 teams. And one of our teams ended up winning and qualifying for the next round. And then in that round, we were able to switch around, so it was all the seniors. But we're the 4 leaders, but honestly, it is completely a group effort, and we would not be where we are without their help.
I like that. I think that's good for any team, even, sports, having some of the younger guys, the freshmen involved because then they learn how to be leaders. They learn what it looks like, and the club is going to be in good shape even when you leave.
Yeah,
it sounds like.
Yeah. So it's super exciting, and it can be a daunting thing to kind of get people to join because it's known for it being a lot of work, but the benefit is it's a lot of work through February. And then since we won our competition, those 15 cases, we actually got 15 new cases to learn in a month, which was definitely difficult. But again, like when you just have so many people trying to support you and behind your back, it makes it so much easier. And luckily, like the Bryn Mawr faculty was very understanding when we went away for the weekend and when we needed extensions on homework because we were just busy practicing all day. Which was just so helpful, and I'm very grateful to be in a place that...
So this takes up a lot of your time, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. I'd say that in the fall, it takes up less of my time. It's just that 1 week meeting. Mm-hmm. And then I'd say January and February, it's almost all of our time. And it's funny because the group of 5 or 4 girls that I've become super close with these past couple years are not people I necessarily see on a day-to-day basis, and we're all like from different friend groups or different like just classes, whatever, but we just bond so tight for these 2 months, and it's incredible, and they're all such great people, and so I'm super lucky to have that as kind of just another outlet for me.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of different things that you're involved in. I know you swim, right?
Yeah.
You've got swimming and then the musical. Are you still doing the musical?
Yes. Yeah, so everybody should come see Into the Woods. It's going to be very good.
Yeah, Mr. Rowell, I subbed for his class yesterday because he was going up to Penn State to pick up all the costumes and the material for the musical coming up.
Yeah, he came in at the end of rehearsal with all the costumes, so we all got really excited. It'll be hot, long sleeves, long dresses, but that's always a really fun part when we've spent so much time blocking it, singing it, making it perfect, and then just to add on the final touches are always really exciting.
Is that where you guys are right now? You're just getting it ready to go. When is it? 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's the first weekend of May. And I don't know if we're on final touches, but yesterday we did an entire run through of Act 1, which I know we all desperately needed to just sit down and just do it. And that felt really great. The biggest part is getting the music down. It's a very involved musical because there's not just 2 or 3 main characters. There's like 7 or 8. And they're all interacting in all of the scenes. And so it is really important that all of the people are there for every rehearsal, which is unfortunately not usually the case. And I myself was somebody who was gone for 3 weeks on vacation. So it's all about like what a person can dedicate to that. So like I went home, I watched the videos, I practiced, and now it feels like I was never gone, which is nice.
The musical, I am here sometimes walking around because I live on campus now, so I'm walking around, or I'm, I sometimes like take a walk at night, and sometimes it's like 9 o'clock at night, and Mr. Rao's car is still here.
Oh yeah, we practice like 6 to 9 most nights, and then when it gets really heavy, I don't know.
Later than that.
Much later. I'll sometimes be like 11:30 midnight, and my mom will call me and be like, "Are you on your way home?" I was like, "Oh, I'll be home in 15." Like, because when we get to those final weeks, like Mr. Rowell is very kind in the way that he never wants to hold us that late. But if we wrap up at like 11:15, then there's 15 minutes to take your costumes off, 15 to hang them up, to clean up the rooms, to put your set pieces back. Like, there's just a lot of behind the scene little things that go into that.
So what makes, you've done this for all 4 years of high school?
Actually, musical? I have not. So I first started, in 6th grade, I auditioned for a play at Bryn Mawr. It's where I met Anae, who's become one of my best friends. We became best friends then and have stayed close. And me and my friend Mia, who is an incredible actress and has been the lead in most of these shows in high school, and I were the only 6th graders at Bryn Mawr who made it. It was just all 7th and 8th graders and then kids from Gilman. And that bonded us because we actually split a role. There was only supposed to be one person in the role, and the director knew my sister, and I think she took some pity on me and was like, "Oh, let's give Elise something." But I started then, and I went all through middle school. I did freshman year, I did Cinderella at Bryn Mawr. And I met my two best friends that year who were juniors. And then COVID hit, and I didn't really want to go to practicing in masks, and I didn't want to it was just so different. And I knew I was waiting for the right opportunity to come back, because I personally prefer a Gilman show, even though last year was my first Gilman show, because of the timing. And I knew that starting my junior year, I did not want to be doing a musical on top of schoolwork, on top of everything, because that's junior year, just such an important year. So I made sure to keep that until the spring, and I did Bright Star, and I had an incredible time. And it just kind of reminded me what it's all about. And really the most important part is the people. And all of the people I've met through theater have been incredible, because everybody is so themselves. Like, no one is trying to put on a fake persona. And they're just really real people who really care about you and about the play and about making sure everything goes well.
So what makes all of the work and the long nights and kind of doing your homework, studying while you're at Gilman, what makes it all worth it to you to take part in the musical?
Yeah. It's not even the shows themselves. Like, it's not the performances. It's not the applause at the end. It's almost like a mutual feeling that we've all gone through it together, and we've all made it through the other side, and we've truly put our all in and created something beautiful to be proud of. And it's almost like finally submitting a super hard assignment, like that relief to just be like, like we proved that we could do it. And that's kind of like the beautiful moment for me. But I mean, just seeing the fellow people in the show singing and dancing and seeing the scenes come together is just like incredible. And it's interesting because most people don't know that I do theater at all. And when I tell them, most people are surprised, because that's not really on my scope of things that I usually would do or be interested in. But it really is something that has been super important to me. And my sister was the same way. She was the one who inspired me to do it in the first place. And she was in Gilman musicals here too. And I know that it's just one of those things where when I look back in 30 years, I'd be like, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah.
Instead of just went home after school and got an extra hour or two. And yeah, a 6 to 9 rehearsal is tough with work, but I'm somebody who, if I don't have something on my plate, I'm probably not going to do my work. I'm going to postpone it off. But if I know I have something, I can get it done.
Yeah, it almost makes you more productive to have the built-in, 6 to 9, I've got to do the musical, so I have to do my homework at another time. Yeah.
Love the Bryn Mawr Library. It's one of my favorite places. Got nice window seats that I love to just hunker down in for a little while.
Do you guys have a similar schedule as Gilman? Because Gilman's schedule it's really nice, but it's my favorite part about Gilman almost is the schedule that we have right now, because it's you do your classes in the morning, then you have lunch, then you have assembly, and then the afternoon is very wide open. It's pretty free.
I think it depends on the person. So that's when we have our clubs. We used to do them during lunch, but now they've made us all do them in the afternoon. But what I'll say is, we have that same morning schedule of the 3 periods, then lunch. Then we have convocation, which I know you've attended a couple of, which are always great, and advisory on Wednesdays. And then most days you're free. Now, one day every 2 weeks, you have to go to dance class to practice for gym drill.
Right.
Which is our little culty dance celebration, which is totally the highlight of every single one of my years.
Is it?
Yes, it's the best. And this is something that not a lot, if you didn't know explicitly, I love to dance, but I would never dance on my own. I would never, whatever, but in dance class, I love to do it. And it's just so much fun. I enjoy it so much. So I always look forward to that. Because it's also just a day where you can just have fun with all of your classmates and celebrate the fact that we're toward the end of the year. And again, it's one of these things where it's you went to dance class all year and now you get to celebrate. And there's a little ceremonial banner toss or switch between the grades, which everybody always gets really excited about, because it's just embracing a new year of life.
So gym drill is on the turf at the end of the year, and each grade does their choreographed dance that they've been working on all year.
Yeah, so we start with a opening dance or opening exercises, which are these exercises that have been going, I think, Gym drill's been going like 123 years or something, just a couple years after the school was founded itself. And these exercises have stayed the same, the majority. They're kind of funny. But then we do an opening dance, and they usually have a theme. This year we don't really have a theme, but there's been Motown, there's been Aretha Franklin, there's been Queen. We've done everything. And the entire, from 6 to 12 are the people who do it. And the entire school does it in unison at the same time. And yeah, it's on the turf. Like parents and spectators will come and line up across the entire edge of it. And then each dance gets to do their own cultural dance, which I've always found really fun because, first of all, the dances are fun themselves, but also it's cool to learn about a new culture and to learn about something else in a way that's respectful to that culture and like is appreciation and not appropriation, which has been really fun.
That's cool. That's awesome. I never really knew about gym drill until people were talking about, we've got rehearsals in the afternoon and sounds fun. Yeah, it is. It's actually very fun for us. And I think that people who watch do enjoy it if it's not raining or super hot, which it has been in years past, because you're there for a while. But it actually is super entertaining to watch. And it's always the highlight of, honestly, I'd say that most of my friends and most of the people at Bryn Mawr would agree that gym drill is totally like the highlight of the year. So you guys do a lot of really good community building type events at Bryn Mawr, I feel like. Yeah. You've got that, and you've got the assembly, the mandatory assembly, and I feel like to that point where the younger students are kind of watching the seniors and the juniors lead, they get a good picture of what leadership looks like. Yeah. So I'd say that Bryn Mawr definitely values leadership on a scale that is just so different from other places because it's not just the class presidents or like people in SGA that are leaders. We have many different organizations, and then also within clubs, within classes, within sports, like there is an opportunity for absolutely anybody to get leadership experience. And I think that that's something that's lost in other places where it's either like a popularity contest or there's just not that right activities for the people who are looking for it. And so I would say that Bryn Mawr definitely highlights leadership in a way that's unique. And community building. And so we are really one Bryn Mawr. And that has been so fun to see because you don't have friends just in your grade. You have friends in all the grades. And then you have friends even in the lower school, like young girls who you can tutor or the teachers. Like you're so close to your teachers and to everyone. You do feel like it's just such a tight-knit community. This is my favorite time of year. This and the fall are my favorite times of year because it's nice outside, and Bryn Mawr, one of my favorite things about Bryn Mawr is I think it has a beautiful campus, lots of trees, lots of grass, and space to be outside. And so I love this time of year because instead of hunkering down in the library and doing work, you'll see people sprawled out on Gordon Field, or you'll see people like sitting in the outside the library in our little portico. And I think it's just a totally different dynamic. But I'd also say that I've never felt like when I walk into a library and I see a sophomore that I'm friends with, I don't just like wave while I'm past. I go up, I talk to her, I say, how are you? Sometimes I'll even sit down and work with them. It's just much more collaborative and together. And I think my experience in sports, I've been on swimming all 4 years. And a lot of the people I knew before from just the swimming world is very small. But I met so many new people and so many people who had never swam before but did it. And like that has been so much fun. And the coach is my middle school history teacher who has always been such a great guy to me. And so it's really just nice to have that sort of community in all of the facets there. I want to get into swimming. That's one workout that I feel like, so yoga is good because it's no impact. Yeah. Like running, I like to run. I like to be outside. But you're pounding your knees and my hips, and I like the swimming would be great for me, I think. So first of all, I'd tell you that you should absolutely start swimming, and that swimming is the progress is how much you put into it. I've swam my entire life. Unfortunately, now I'm swimming less, but like you, I've always had problems with my knees and my back.
So running was never an option. Now my mom is somebody who loved to run half and full marathons and was like, that is her piece, is running.
Mm-hmm.
And both me and my sister could just never relate to that. And so we ended up trying out for swimming. When I tried out for swimming, I cried so much. I was like 5. I cried so much that the coach told me I only have to swim half a lap, and you had to swim a full lap to qualify to swim on the team. So I swam half a lap, and I swam a lot for a lot more time and a lot more years than any of the people who swam the full lap. So I don't know. It was always like my safe space. I played soccer and lacrosse. I tried them all, but swimming was the one that stuck with me. And I used to play violin for years, and that always worked really well with swimming because they were always at different times. But I'd say that swimming is very peaceful. It's just something that, even though it's a team sport, it's so individual. But I think that's something I then started to struggle with. And I know Francesca was on here talking about mental health in sports, and that's where ever since COVID, I had a lot of problems going back to swimming, because instead of being somewhere like peaceful where I have a blank slate, I would be worrying. And when you're there, you're stuck with your thoughts and whatever you're thinking about in the water. Now, that's not for people who are just swimming for fun or casually, but like in a set when you're on at specific times and you have to go when they're telling you to go, and you have to go a certain speed and do a certain stroke. Mm-hmm. It's just not as therapeutic. Now, so I've just had those problems with it and getting stuck. And so I've done a lot of advocacy for mental health, and being able to advocate for yourself is just so important because it's something that makes you feel so alone. But I'm a big advocate of finding a form of exercise that you truly enjoy. And so that's how I switched into yoga. And I love to do a mix of both. And there's times where I'll just go to the Y and like swim on my own, do my own set, because it's great. It's just like the pressure I felt was not what I wanted. And unfortunately during COVID, I was forced to switch teams. And I'm so grateful for the team that took me in. And my coach there is great, but it just was never quite right because, as I said, I'm a community-based person, and I lost the people I swam here at Gilman on Mariners for 9 years. So I had grown up with these people, and then we had all split off and gone different ways. And the 2 people I switched with were 2 years older than me. So they graduated, I had a whole year left. And there were great people on that team, and people I'm just so thankful to have met. But it lacked something to push me. Mm-hmm. But I've tried all different other forms of exercise. So yoga is my current deal, mm-hmm. but I'm sure give it a couple months, I might be switching it up again.
Yeah, it's good to switch it up, you know? It's good for the body, too, to have a variety of outlets. That's
why I like CorePower, especially because they have so many different kinds of classes, depending on what you think your body needs. But I'd say that what I've found to love about yoga is that it is that blank mind slate that I used to have with swimming. And so I really do feel like when I go in there, I am present in myself. And I'm not thinking about other things. And if I am, it's so much easier for me to just kind of dispel that away, mm-hmm. and to keep moving forward. And I think it's a great time to set your own intentions of like how you want to be and how you want to live and carry yourself. And I just think reflection is like one of the most important things that people can do. I've never been a journaler, but I do take time to reflect a lot. And I think that that's a time where you really get all the time in the world to just think. Yeah, yoga is great because it's hard. You know, it's a lot harder than people think, mm-hmm. especially the sculpt, the yoga sculpt. That's my favorite. The first couple times that I walked into yoga sculpt, I was like, oh, like 5 3-pound weights. You know, that's I can grab the 15 and just no, it's so hot. It's so hard. You're holding poses for a long period of time. And it's really good because you don't really have time to worry about certain things. You have to focus on the moment, you know? Exactly. Yeah, sculpt is definitely my favorite, because not only do you just like sweat and feel good after, and that's the thing that I love to lift weights because that's just something that I've always been good at and that I enjoy. But whenever I leave, I never feel as accomplished as like when I'd get out of swim practice and I'd be breathless and sweating and whatever. So it gives me that, but it also gives me the strength. But like you were saying, like it doesn't matter how much you can lift in real life. You get in there with a set of 5-pound weights, and it feels like 50. Like you feel like you're dying. And everything takes so much attention that there's not time to think about anything else until the very end when you get to invite whatever thoughts you want back in, which has been super helpful.
And you're so tired at the end that you don't even really need to think. You just go relax. It's the best.
Yeah, you don't care.
It is the best.
It's the best.
And it's good because, I walked in there a couple weeks ago and there were 30 people. There were a ton of people in there. And I almost left. I said to the lady at the front, too many people in here. She was like, no, get back in there. And once you're in there and moving, you forget that anyone else is there.
Yeah. And no one is judgmental. So first of all the people that work there are awesome and have been so nice to me. And every time I come in, oh, Elise, you're here. I'm so happy to see you, which just makes you excited, especially when it's something new and uncomfortable. Or like during class, I'll be like, oh, good work. Like, it just makes you happy. But also the other people in the class are so great. And so everybody's struggling. Nobody is perfect. And especially in those hard classes, nobody is having a great time. So it's almost like a mutual feeling. And afterwards, I love to talk to the people there because everybody's doing something else and doing their own thing. But you all come together to do this. And I think what's super important is that you show up, and they're very good at telling you that you don't need to get the heaviest weights, or you don't need to do all of the reps, or you can take a modification, like if you're not feeling it. And that's something that I kind of lacked in swimming because it is just, you do it the same way as everybody else, but there's some days where your body can't, and there's some days where you want to be extra challenged. So having those options is really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yoga's the best. Sculpt is one that I have to force myself. I wouldn't say it's my favorite one to go to.
Yeah.
I'd say the C2 is my favorite
good.
because it's the right, amount of difficulty and feel good. Like Sculpt, I'm blacked out after that.
Oh yeah. So I usually go from yoga straight to rehearsal because it's the only time, since we rehearse Mondays through Thursday, and the only sculpt on Fridays is like 1:00 when I'm in convocation. Like that's the only time I can go. And so either I do a sculpt before I do a C2, and the C2 is great. And honestly, some days it's harder than sculpt because you just have to hold much harder poses for much longer. But I'd say sculpt, like I just walk out feeling rewarded. But when my drive from there to Gilman after, there's not a single thought in my mind. I'm just completely wiped. And then to go to rehearsal is fun. But when I get home, I'm ready to knock out.
Wow, that's tough. I mean, after yoga, I want to go to bed.
Take a nap, yeah. So that's why I'm very diligent in getting my work done before I do any of that, because otherwise I will be very unhappy and very tired at 9:00 trying to do my work. And I'm someone who's like strict 10:30. If my work's not done, it's not getting done. And it doesn't benefit anybody if I come to school tomorrow and I can't learn. So now, granted, that doesn't happen very often with me, and mostly when I'm like, okay, donezo, like I'm not doing that. It's not an assignment that's due the next day because I usually do it one day in advance. But sometimes I just need to put it down and be like, this is not benefiting me anymore. And if I am tired or not giving my best tomorrow, then that's going to be 3 classes that I feel like I'm not understanding or I'm not doing as well in.
That's pretty good, because I was asking my class actually today what time most people go to bed, and majority of the class said midnight.
Yeah.
Which midnight to 6:30 probably wake up is, I don't think that's enough.
It's the worst. It's the worst, and I just don't like that feeling when you wake up and you just immediately dread everything. And I don't know, I'm not a night person, but I'm also not a morning person. Like, I don't really think I classify in either, but I would definitely rather go to bed early and wake up early, then go to bed super late and wake up late. And I set my alarm every day for 6:44. I don't know why I set it in freshman year, never fixed it to 6:45. But every day I snooze it twice. I get up, I get changed. I always set my uniform out the night before because my mind is blank in the morning and I can't think about where my socks are so it just makes it simpler. And I enjoy that sort of piece of just 10 minutes of getting ready where just nothing is happening. But my parents hate it, but I'm somebody who always needs background noise. So I'll always put on like a TV show, but on like low volume, and I'm not watching it. And I've already seen the series 3 times through, but it's just good background noise for me.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Let's get to Washington University is where you're going next year.
Yes, I am.
What made you decide to apply early there? What's it like there? I've never been there. St. Louis, Missouri, right?
Yeah. It's tough to tell people I'm going to Missouri but then I always have to follow it up with St. Louis. And actually, what's most interesting is it's very similar to Baltimore. I was walking around campus between meetings with people, and we came a little bit off campus, and it felt like I was walking through Roland Park, which was crazy. But personally, I didn't really want to go somewhere that had a huge Baltimore contingency. And I also wanted a medium-sized school in a city, or I'd call it city adjacent. Like, I didn't want to be in New York. I didn't want to be in Chicago or Boston. I just wanted to be a little bit out, just so I could have an actual campus. And WashU fit all those criteria, and I want to study biomedical engineering, and they have a great engineering school there that I knew I could apply into. And it came down to a couple schools, and honestly, at the end of the day, WashU was the only one that actually checked every single box that I had, and I decided to go with my gut. And it's not an easy school to get into, and I knew that if I left it off to ED2 or to regular decision, like, my chances would be very low. And I decided to just trust my gut. And I had visited when I decided I was going to ED there. My parents decided I could visit, so I went and I saw a couple of girls from Bryn Mawr who are there now. And they just absolutely love it. And the 2 girls that I saw are complete opposite people, and always have been as long as I've known them. But they both loved WashU for completely different reasons. And that made me feel good to know, like, these are 2 people who have chosen completely different paths, completely different majors, and have both found their own community and their happiness there, which is just, I'm really excited about it. And a sweet girl in my grade, Meredith, is also going. So it'll be nice to have somebody.
Yeah, you've got somebody.
But yeah, that was, at the end of the day, that's what it came down to. And the campus is beautiful. And it was one of those things where I had done like a little online interview with a student there. And he had asked me, this was almost a year and a half ago now, have you visited campus? And I said, oh no, like, my parents don't want me to visit until I get in somewhere or decide to apply early. And he was like, well, you should come visit campus because you should, but nobody has ever come to campus and then left saying they didn't love it. Like, everybody who comes falls in love with the campus because it's beautiful. It's right onto a park. And it just felt right when I was there. Lots of outdoor space. But yeah, and I really, one of the big things it came down to is I really want to study abroad. And engineering is famous for not allowing kids to study abroad. And WashU was the only school in my top contenders that would allow me to study abroad and still graduate in 4 years. So everywhere else said, you can study abroad, but you're going to have to do 4.5 because those credits aren't going to transfer back. So they do have special programs there that allow for me to do that. And that was kind of my final nail in the coffin to be like, this is it. That's
good that you know what you want to study. You want to go abroad. You know where you want to go abroad.
So I don't. There's such a long list, which is like very lucky because even if you can study abroad, engineering, it's very limited usually. But they've got places all over. So when I was in Australia and when I was in New Zealand, I actually saw 2 of the schools. I didn't go and tour, but we walked through the campuses. There's one like in University of Sydney, and then one in University of Auckland, which is in New Zealand.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I can go to University of Edinburgh. There's a couple schools in like London School of Economics or something, like, which is random. But I could go to Trinity. There's one in Hong Kong. Like, there's just, I could choose literally anything. Luckily, I've got some time to choose, but it does make me feel nice that I really do have options.
Yeah. So I forgot that you went to Australia and New Zealand recently.
Yes.
Was that just a vacation that you went on?
Yeah. So ironically, my sister is studying abroad there.
Nice.
So she's at the University of Wollongong, which is about an hour south of Sydney. And we wanted to go visit because it's once in a lifetime opportunity. We were gone for 3 weeks, which is definitely a hefty time to be gone, especially as a second semester senior in school and working. But one of the weeks was spring break, and then the other 2 weeks, my teachers were so nice to me and were like, this is an incredible opportunity, and I can't wait to see you when you get back, but enjoy your time. I did my physics and my calculus from there, but all the other classes I kind of put on the backbench, at least while I was there. And it was incredible.
What was the highlight of the trip?
Queenstown, New Zealand. So there's a North and South Island of New Zealand. The South Island is the most beautiful place I've ever been to. We were in Queenstown, which it's just these enormous mountains, and they're super steep. So you're super close to them, and they feel all that bigger. My aunt owns a ranch out in Montana, and there's the same sort of like beautiful, huge mountains, but they don't feel that big where we are because they're not super steep, but they're super tall. So this was a totally different feeling. And I'm lucky enough to have parents who really do love travel and find it super valuable. And we were in the position where we were able to go. And so they hopped on that chance, which I'm super grateful for, and that they would bring me as well. And it was totally incredible. My favorite place was definitely Queenstown. I loved Sydney. I thought it was a really cool place. But it's funny when you go abroad to somewhere like Australia or New Zealand, there are so many similarities to places in the U.S. And that's something I always forget when I go abroad, is that the U.S. is so diverse. Mm-hmm. Like out west versus the East Coast is totally different. And my parents lived in Seattle for a long time, so we've gone back a couple times, and there was sort of that West Coast vibe in a lot of these places we went to, which was just beautiful. Beautiful trees, beautiful mountains, really unforgettable. And 3 weeks is a long time with just my parents, but...
And the flight, 20 hours?
Yeah, something like that, because it was 5 to LA on the way there, and then 12, but then on the way there it was 7, and then 15, and then on the way back it was 12 and 5. So we had a 9-hour layover in LAX, which is just never where you want to be for 9 hours.
Jeez.
But
was it miserable, travel?
A little bit, but it was so worth it. It was like the second you step off the plane, you're like, God, thank God I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad. And it's worth it. And so my sister actually also studied abroad in South Africa.
She's done two different.
So she's done two. So this one was through Bryn Mawr, and this is one they still have going. They just are starting it back up this year with this place called Herschel in Cape Town, South Africa. And so we had an exchange here for 2 months. Then my sister went away for 2 months. Blue was her my sister's name is Gray. Her exchange was blue. My dog is teal, and her Blue's sister's name is Indigo. So there's just like a lot of colors for a little while. Wow. But her exchange was great. Like, I loved Blue, and she became like a sister to me. And then this was my sister's summer into junior year. So they go during the summer, and then the other one will come later. And they leave around December, I believe. And so we were actually able to visit her when she was in Cape Town, which was also incredible. And also a very long plane ride. And that one was arguably worse, just because it was pretty much, I don't think we ever changed flights. Like, I think it was just an 18-hour, you touch down places, but we never got off the plane. It was like an 18-hour just shot, which was tough. And I'm not somebody who sleeps on airplanes or in cars, so it takes a while for me the movies are a savior for sure.
Wow, that's awesome though.
Yeah.
I'd love to go to Australia someday. Sounds like a cool trip. Would you like to study abroad there maybe?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. So I don't know if I'd do Sydney. Like, there's so many different campuses they have. My sister's campus, I don't have the opportunity to study there, but it was incredible. Like, you felt like you were in almost like a jungle of sorts, you know, lots of trees. I mean, it was a huge school. I think it's like 60,000 people. And I didn't know that. I thought because she goes to such a small liberal arts school, I thought that's what she was getting into, but it's a huge, like, big university, which I think she's having fun, just kind of experiencing both ways of life. But it was really beautiful. And so I definitely consider it, but it might be fun. And I think my parents would enjoy if I went somewhere else so that they'd have a new place to visit and not 15 hours away.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, let's get to the book,
Of
Frankenstein.
course.
Interesting choice.
Yes.
How'd you come across Frankenstein?
Okay, so women's science fiction with Dr. Waters at Bryn Mawr has been my favorite class, my favorite English class I've taken at Bryn Mawr by far. So why I recommend Frankenstein so much is there is the Frankenstein that we know from, you know, with the bolts out of his head and shocked by electricity. And honestly, reading this book, I was like, how did anybody ever get to that? Because it's totally different. And we, because it's women's science fiction, we looked at it through the lens of like motherhood. And Mary Shelley was only 18 when she wrote Frankenstein and pretty much created the genre of science fiction. And she herself had such a interesting experience with life and death. Like, she gave birth to a lot of kids who tragically died during childbirth. Her own mother died when she was born, and like, she just had a lot of confusion when it came to life and death. So this whole book, we analyzed it through that lens of like Dr. Frankenstein trying to create life and bypass motherhood in order to just create life. Also, the fact that he's creating it from dead people is symbolic. And the most compelling part, in my opinion, is when Frankenstein's monster, who is never named, and that's another interesting thing, that it has become in culture that the monster's name is Frankenstein and not the doctor. And so Dr. Frankenstein's monster becomes sentient, and he has feelings, and he reflects on the world, and he wonders what his purpose in life is. And it's just all very human. And I'm somebody who's done a lot of work with AI, and especially during Ethics Bowl, we've done a lot on ChatGPT and about large language models. And also, just this past summer, I did an internship where I worked on some different smart learning models. And it just made me think about, how do we draw the line of what is human and what is humanity at its root that's different from something like this? Because like, is it sentience that makes that line? Is it an actual human body that makes that line? And where can we discern that line? And so that's what the whole class kind of explores. And Dr. Waters does an incredible job picking stories that reflect that and make you ask questions, which is always my favorite thing. But I'd recommend it to anybody because it's totally different than you're expecting it to be. And it was a book that I genuinely enjoyed from start to end. And the conversations we had about it were just amazing. And it's not that long of a book. I mean, this book, only a quarter of it is the actual story, and the rest are essays and analysis of it.
I got my version right here.
Yeah, exactly. Yours is so much smaller than mine.
Yeah.
And our edition has essays and drawings and different things and timelines. And those were super helpful because not only could we interpret it our way, then we looked at it in modern applications. So this one says Frankenstein and radical science, and Frankenstein and film. And we just talked about how does, even though it's a story that surrounds a lot of male characters, how does Mary Shelley's experiences kind of influence that?
I think it's really interesting for today. You were talking about ChatGPT a little bit, and I've been thinking about, I was actually talking to the head of the English department a little bit in passing about ChatGPT and ethics.
Yeah.
And how, I don't know, what do you think? Like, in the future, will you go to a machine for answers about questions that today you would just ask your best friends or your parents? Like, what should I do in this situation? And the machine will give you the best answer that weighs every risk and gives you probably the quote unquote right answer.
Yeah. Well, we've already started to see this, and I think this is something that people don't even think about, but people do that all the time when they Google something. Oh, what should I do? Blank. Or what does this mean?
What's wrong with me?
Yeah, exactly.
WebMD pops up and says, you've got a cold.
Yeah. So it's mixing that, and it's mixing what we view as sentience and humanity. And we spent a lot of time picking apart, like, what is a human, only to switch it around and just be like, does it even matter if it is? Like, what the implications that this has on society. And what we were trying to argue is that ChatGPT, now that it's been created, isn't going to go away. And so I know a lot of schools are pushing for, it being banned. I know it's like obviously banned in classrooms now, but in the future. But I just think it's going to reach a point, and it is so smart that it'll eventually be undetectable. And so I think that instead of asking the question of how do we stop this, we look more into the questions of how do we embrace this? How do we use this to benefit everybody, to explain the hard problems? Our own English teacher asked the question. She's like, does anybody's writing matter anymore if a computer can produce something similar in a couple of minutes? And she was like, listen, I don't even know the answer to that. Like, of course I think people's writing matters, but what makes the computer's writing not matter? But I think that there's just so many conversations to be had there. And I've become very close to my teacher, Miss Bala, this year, who worked at Microsoft on large language models and machine learning. And even with my own professor last summer working on a machine learning model, it was crazy to see how quickly these can adapt and learn and work. And I did a project to detect hypertension based on like a survey that doesn't require blood pressure, which is the main thing. And it was like, what people don't understand is there's so many different types of these models. So I used 7 or 8 and got one that had 85% success rate of guessing. So then I was like, okay, this is good. And you continue to train it and train it and train it. And it's almost like a dog. And then all of a sudden, it knows what it's doing, and it can predict with a 98% success rate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you think about artificial intelligence in medicine in the future, and how, like, I can picture a world where I would rather have a surgeon who is computerized than a human, because a human has a shaky hand, has too much coffee in the morning, right? And is that ethical or not? And all those questions arise that you'll probably have to deal with in the next couple of years. Yeah,
we did a case that was asking, who's to blame if a surgery goes wrong, if the robot is performing it? Is it somebody who should be spectating? Is it the hospital?
The programmer?
Is it the people who programmed it? Is it the people who built the parts? Like, can we even blame a machine? Like, should the machine be blamed? And can you even place blame on something that's not what we deem human? There's so many different sides, and that's why Ethics Bowl is so much fun, because every single person will have a different side, and then we kind of compile it down. And it's great, and those sorts of questions are so exciting. And I am going to be pre-med, so it's fun to see the like overlap between engineering and medical sciences. And my grandfather, who's my biggest inspiration in life, was a surgeon for many, many years, and still talks to me about it all the time, and talks about new innovations, and tells me about all these different things. And it is very inspirational to kind of see that the world is going to continue to move forward. And that's why when it comes to AI and computer science, I feel like we should embrace it and learn how to work it in our favor rather than try to push it out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would love to have another podcast conversation with you like 10 years into the future and see what's going on in the world, and see what you say after your experience in college and afterward.
Sure, it'll be different. Yeah.
Be totally different, but it'll be interesting. Elise, last question. If you could recommend somebody from Bryn Mawr or just in general to come on our podcast, who would it be? Would it be a friend? Would it be a teacher?
I think that I would have to recommend, now I'm not sure he would do it, but my physics teacher, Mr. Amon, has been just one of the greatest teachers I've ever had of all time. I had him my freshman year, and I remember getting so frustrated because I'd get something wrong or I didn't know how to do something, and he'd be like, it's okay. Or you mess something up, and he laughs at you, and he laughs with you. And it's something where you're like expecting your teacher to sit down with you and work with, and he'll do that, but he'll also like give you the push when you need the push. He's not going to coddle you. And I remember freshman year being so frustrated. And then now that I'm taking AP Physics this year, it's like the best thing ever to look back and be like, oh, he was just showing us support and letting us spread our own wings and try to figure it out. And he's definitely changed my experience for the better. And I think he's a super wise guy, and has it super interesting. He's got his one ear pierced. He's got talking parrots at home. He's lived a million different lives. But his true passion is teaching physics to people at Bryn Mawr. And I think there's just such beauty in that. And he's incredible.
Mr. Amon?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll send him an email. Thank you very much. Elise, appreciate you coming in today. It was a fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great.
Of course.